So what happens every year is, obviously there's a lot of legislation that goes on throughout the year, and there are C.A.R., and I say we because we are all C.A.R. We watch them, we oppose them, we support them, whatever it is, depending on the bill. And then a lot of other stuff goes on in the meetings also. But I'll start off with as you know, in our area, particularly in the foothills and around, and then throughout the state, there are a lot of issues with insurance regarding fire, not being able to get insurance, the cost of insurance incredibly high, what we have to do for defensible space, all that kind of stuff. And C.A.R. put together a task force a couple of years ago that has been working very, very closely with the Insurance Commission and watching bills and legislation regarding that and looking out for the best interest of our clients. So there's a lot of bills that we're watching. One of them, though, that we did come out and oppose, it's Senate Bill 440. And among other things, it seeks to fund a new home hardening program. But the program would be in part funded by a potential fee placed on non-earthquake insurance policies. Well, we didn't like that, so we are opposing that bill, and we will see what happens. As I said, there's a lot of other bills we're watching and paying attention to that very closely. You probably also are well aware, switching gears, but there's a lot of talk about getting away with this. This is federal taxation, removing the stepped up basis, raising income tax rates, all sorts of things going on nationally. We at C.A.R. wanted to support, in conjunction with N.A.R., the exclusion of any capital gain from the income level to which the tax is applied. I'm going to get into that in a minute. There's 3 of us here at S.A.R. that are also N.A.R. directors, and I'm one of those, and we rolled right into the N.A.R. meetings right after C.A.R. And I'll just kind of quickly touch on a couple of things. Just since it just happened, I figured I'd throw that in too. There is, and the lenders might be interested in this, and all of us with our clients, C.A.R. in conjunction with N.A.R. is going to oppose the reporting of negative credit information on credit reports due to financial hardship caused by COVID-19. So it needs to be a COVID-19 reason. That is currently protected in the C.A.R.S. Act, but after the C.A.R.S. Act is no longer in effect, we would like for that to still be part of. We don't want that to go away. We want, if your negative credit was caused by COVID, we want that to be protected. So we'll see how that goes. The couple things here, just locally, a couple of our members got some really, really good appointments. Aaron Stump was elected to a 3-year term to be an N.A.R. director appointed by C.A.R. That is a big deal. Yes, I see applause. It's a big deal to get that. So congratulations, Aaron. Doug Koval got nominated to a 2-year term for the C.A.R. Impact Trustees. That's the Issues Mobilization Political Action Committee. So way to go, Doug. There, a whole, as you can imagine, so much of these meetings centered around home ownership and the lack of housing. We all know there's a lack of housing. We are woefully, woefully short in this state and have been for a long time, and it's really gotten so much worse. There is the California, if you hear this, Californians for Home Ownership, CFH is what they're calling it. It's an entity that was established by C.A.R. and it continues to pursue litigation against measures that are to help support the removal of barriers for home ownership. For instance, in Berkeley, They were successful in challenging a city decision to deny 260 unit housing development, with 50% was going to be affordable housing. The appellate court sided with the position that we took, and now the 260 new housing units will be built. So that was a big win. That was a classic case of NIMBYism. You know, don't do it in my backyard, build it somewhere else. And that's not how it's going to work. It can't work that way. Huntington Beach has a similar thing going on. We're fighting and watching that one. And we're also CEQA. This group, the Californians for Homeownership, CEQA is a huge issue and a huge problem with trying to get things built, construction projects around the state. So we're paying attention to that and working with that. Another thing there's a lot of really, really interesting conversation regarding housing that centers around commercial space. COVID, as you know, has kind of changed our worlds a lot. There is a big concern that there will be a lot of commercial property that's going to be vacant, if not vacant, greatly reduced, because a lot of companies have decided you don't have to go back physically to work, or part-time, or in a reduced measure. So these huge office buildings potentially will not be used the same way, and they're going to be partially or fully vacant. So there's a lot of focus on the conversion of commercial space to housing, which is just really, really interesting to me. And it could just be just a fantastic way to get some more to transfer, over to just reconfigure it into housing. And when you think about it, all of the infrastructure's there, the roads are there, the lights are there, electricity is there, sewage is there, all of it's there. It'll be a transition. It's going to be interesting to see. But they've actually, C.A.R, we talked about, if in your own worlds, of even strip centers, when you go out through Sacramento County, it doesn't have to be a downtown building. There might be, you might see something or know somebody that maybe that conversion could happen. And then on a local basis, our government relations committee works really closely with the supervisors here in Sacramento County and the city council. Maybe we can be instrumental in helping convert some of these buildings that are not going to be used, or convert them to housing. So we need to think a little differently. And that to me just seems really, really exciting, that maybe some of that could happen. Maybe some affordable housing, some workforce housing, something to get going with that. So kind of keep that in your mind if you know of anybody or work with anybody. The other focuses, of course, at C.A.R, diversity, equity, and inclusion, a real emphasis on fair housing. We've talked a lot about that here, and April just mentioned some stuff coming up about that. It's a continuing effort to, not discriminate and be very, very aware of fair housing and treating people equitably. Okay, regarding forms, you guys all know that the new RPA comes out in December. There's going to be classes coming up. They're going to begin in August. Gov was on, I believe, last week, I think it was, but there are also 3 other forms that are new starting July 1. Well, they're either new or revised. One is a federal debt collector form for agents that help their clients with collecting money from tenants. That is a federal requirement now. The other one, again, there's an update to the fire hardening and defensible space form. That has been revised. There's several changes in that, so pay attention to that. And there is also now a transfer of listing agreement. So if you have a listing and you're going to change companies and your broker agrees to let you take the listing somewhere else, there's a form for that now. So let's see here. Oh, this is interesting too. As we all know, home inspectors, there's not a state licensing agency for home inspectors. C.A.R is going to be producing a list of certified home inspectors based upon a rigorous vetting process and recommendations from realtors. So I've gotten some emails on that. Maybe some of you have. If you have a home inspector you love and want to recommend them to this program, do so, because at some point there's going to be a list from C.A.R regarding home inspectors. Okay, another thing that was, of course, interesting, a lot of conversation. An attempt was made to establish rules for the use of coming soon statuses in MLSs. Well, good luck with that, right? So no consensus was reached, and it is not likely to be. So each MLS is going to set their own rules for that throughout the state. Continue to. 1031 exchanges, and this shifts. We talked about it at C.A.R. We talked about it at N.A.R. The two big concerns coming down from N.A.R. is the stepped up basis upon death. There is strong talk about eliminating that. That would really, really impact all of us. So that is one N.A.R. is really putting a lot of effort into it. And the other one's 1031 tax exchange. And in some meetings I'm in, they think that we're going to be able to retain it. In other meetings, I get the word that it's very, very threatened. I mean, it's been on the list for years to get rid of it. Something I didn't know, it's just a little tidbit. And when we're talking to legislators, 1031, if we were live, I'd ask you to take a guess of when that became a law. 1921, it's 100 years old. I never would have guessed that. So it's not some newfangled idea that popped up in the last 5 years or something. I mean, it's been around, but a lot of legislators don't understand what a 1031 exchange is. There's a great video by C.A.R. about it, but it's a 100-year-old. Well, I didn't know it was 100 years old. I thought it was great. The other conversation at C.A.R., which just so you guys are aware of it, C.A.R. owns a building in L.A. Have owned it, I think, since the 80s. It's paid for. It's huge. It's like 25,000 square feet. And we, just like talking a little while ago about commercial space, there is no need for that building that size. And even before COVID, a couple of years ago, the leadership at C.A.R., and they ran it by all of the directors, was starting to look at what to do with that property. And it's a big, big, long conversation, but the building could be torn down. The building could be split. In the last couple of years, they've gotten the entitlements to the property to do some development, should we decide to, which has really increased the value of the property. So there's a lot of conversation about whether we, C.A.R., is going to develop it, sell it, do a combination of it, or whatever. Maybe build some affordable housing, maybe build some workforce housing, let somebody else manage it, partner with them. There's a gazillion options that can happen. There was a lot of conversation about that at the meetings. It's going back to leadership, and they are going to come back to the directors in the fall with some, there were a couple of options presented. The directors wanted more options. So there's going to be more conversation and talk about that. But that's interesting also. One other thing at N.A.R. is our independent contractor status is getting a little, there's some unclarity to it because there's a new, now I got to remember the name of this the PRO Act. It's a labor law. And where real estate had a carve out for independent contractors, for us being independent contractors, this new law, the PRO Act, is silent regarding real estate specifically. So that could create a misunderstanding or a conflict. So N.A.R. is all over that one too, to help us retain our independent contractor status. So I think that's all I have. Do people have questions? And I see other directors on this call today too, so I can answer. Are they? April saying something.
We do have a question.
Okay.
Who do we give our recommendations for home inspectors to?
I think, if I might remember, because we all get a gazillion emails, I got an email request. I would go on the C.A.R. website, and I believe there's a place you can. Dave Tanner, do you happen to know?
Yeah, it's in the report. And I think that Spencer put a link to the entire report in the chat.
It is. Oh, you know what? It is there. I'll share it in the chat.
Oh, it is. You're right.
It's in there. So let me do that.
You're going to do that. I see that now. Thanks, Dave. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There it is from Kelly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, Kelly's on it.
So there we go. And you
Perfect.
if you click on it now, it'll just open up in a new screen on your computer, and then you'll have it, because once we close this Zoom session down, it won't be there anymore for you.
Poof, it's gone.
Gone.
Perfect.
Any other questions about what's going on with C.A.R.?
I think that there's another thing that's of concern with the legislature, and that is that they're looking at passing a law which would allow local jurisdictions to supersede state law
Yes.
regarding building regulation. And that would mean that all of these battles that we've won over the past years requiring ADUs and all of that stuff, local jurisdictions would be able to override that. So that's something that we can't afford to lose when that starts working its way through the legislature.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that would
Correct.
work for, yeah, interesting. Dave, could you address the two things, the new open house rules, because I went over it slightly and lightly, and the new PED form that just came out?
Okay, there's a new PED form that came out, although they're working on, I was in a meeting yesterday with Joel Singer, and they're working on eliminating the requirement for PED form by just having you have the people certify when they enter the property that they have followed all the restrictions that are in the PED form. So you can have a live certification at the door rather than at the completion of the PED form. The main purpose is you want to make sure that people certify that they're not, active and they haven't been exposed to somebody in the past 14 days, all the things the PED form covers. You can do that by live certification at the door rather than the PED form. So that's the one change that's coming up there. The main change that's happening now, of course, is that you can have a traditional open house. Just put out your signs with no restriction or anything on them saying open house, bring the people in. The restriction is that you have to comply not only with state law, but also with local law. And our local law at this time says that you can't have more than 3 households, not more than 10 people in the property at any one time. So it's not just you open the door and let anybody in. And that's one of the things that does have some concern. You can now do open houses for the public, but you probably can't do an open house tour as part of a regional meeting because you're probably going to have more than 10 people going through the house unless you have them stand outside and wait for somebody to come out before the other ones go in. So it makes it a little more difficult from that standpoint, but there'll probably be more changes coming between now and June 15th. But the ones that we got now were the ones that they were able to get approval from the state, and some other things the state said, like that they're still working on the restrictions. Right now, the requirement to sanitize is still in place, but they're looking at removing that requirement also. So there will be more changes coming in the next few weeks, but what you have now is primarily you can do an open house, but you have to be restricted as to the number of people, number of households being represented at any one time.
And Dave, what happens June 15 when most all the mask mandate's going to end, most restrictions are going to end at that point?
Yeah, well, right now the state, Sacramento County basically has changed the county directive to say that you have to be in compliance with the state directives. So basically we don't have standalone requirements in Sacramento County today, as long as you're following what's in the state law. Michelle? So I think that's...
Well, when the state law changes on June 15th, because that's the announcement we keep hearing, that June 15th, the mandates are going to be lifted, the COVID-19, the mask mandate's going to be lifted. Will the open house, all of that, showing properties be reflective of that? Will the PED form end at that point?
Once the state changes it now, Sacramento County doesn't have a standalone regulation that's different. So once the state changes it, then that will apply to us in Sacramento County too. However, between now and June 15th, we still have the zones. So Sac County is still in the red zone. So you still have the restrictions that apply to the red zone. We are told that as of June 15th, all the zones will go away. So then whatever is the most liberal of the state laws probably will apply to all of us. But between now and then, we have the restrictions that I mentioned earlier because we're still in the red zone. If we change zones between then, those restrictions will change also.
Okay, and then there's a brand new PED form that's relates to everybody, correct? There's no seller or visitor. It's just one all-inclusive short PED form.
It's a one-size-fits-all form now. Yeah.
Okay, and it is in zip forms now.
My understanding, it's in zip forms now.
Okay, so that would have been from yesterday. So update your zip forms because the PED form is the one form that does not automatically update if you have it in a template or in a transaction. Yes, they have to sign every time they see a home.
Right.
For that.
That's why it doesn't update, because you have to have a new one each time.
Yeah, but you could have multiple addresses on the same PED form. Okay,
I can maybe on the side for C.A.R. just give one more thing.
Sure.
For anybody that is using Glide, as you know, Glide got purchased by Compass Realty, and so C.A.R. terminated their contract with Glide as a member service. However, they have entered into an agreement to still allow Glide to access C.A.R. forms. So if you're using Glide an individual subscription, you can continue just the way you have been. If you were using Glide as a member service provided free by C.A.R., you'll no longer have access to that. If you want to continue using Glide, if you think that that's your program of choice, you'll have to enter into an individual subscription with Glide in order to continue using it. Otherwise, you'll have to change to one of the other 3 or 4 platforms that C.A.R. still contracts with. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dave. I had a question about the Fair Housing Committee that is going to be, Kelly, you talked about that. S.A.R. is going to have a Fair Housing Committee next year?
No, C.A.R. is starting a policy committee about fair housing. Yeah, C.A.R.
Okay, great. And what will they be doing? What is their mission on this?
I'm not sure I've seen their mission yet. Maybe another C.A.R. director on here has, but I would assume that they will be weighing in on any type of policy that might affect fair housing. So as many of you know, there's a huge homeownership gap when you break it down by race in our state and in our country. And so their focus, I assume, will be hyper vigilant with respect to any type of policy that might affect that, either positive or negative, to close that homeownership gap based on race.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.